Have you ever wished you could just know what someone was really thinking? Well, what if I told you that you can? The secrets are all there, plain as day, not in what people are saying, but in what their bodies are doing. Today, we're going to unlock that hidden language of nonverbal communication, pulling from the awesome work of Patrick King.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me hit you with a wild statistic. What percentage of our communication do you think is actually the words we say? 50%? Maybe 60%? Nope. Get this, a staggering 80% of all human communication is nonverbal. That's right, most of what's being said in any conversation isn't being said with words at all.
So what does that actually mean for you and me? Well, it means that if you're only listening to the words, you're missing out on the vast majority of the conversation. You're missing the real emotion, the true intent, and all the juicy stuff that's hiding just under the surface.
But what if you had a key to unlock all that hidden meaning? A way to translate all those unspoken signals? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. Think of this as your personal cheat code for social interaction. It's a seriously powerful tool that's going to help you see what people are truly thinking and feeling.
Ready to get your new superpower? Cool. Here's our game plan. First, we'll learn to spot the green lights, all those signals that tell you things are going great. Then, we'll get good at seeing the red flags, the warning signs that something's a little off. After that, we're going to level up and learn to read someone's inner state. And finally, we'll talk about how to unleash this new power in your own life.
All right, first up, let's talk about the green lights. These are the positive, inviting signals that tell you you're on the right track. When you see these, you know the other person is feeling open, they're engaged, and they're really receptive to what you have to say.
Okay, let's start with one of the most powerful and simple signals there is, open hands. When someone's palms are visible, it's pretty much a universal sign of honesty. Think about a little kid. When they're proud of something, what do? They run up and show you with open hands. But if they're trying to hide something, poof, those hands disappear right into their pockets or behind their back. It's a primal instinct, and it's a total dead giveaway.
And here are a few more green lights to keep an eye out for. Someone unbuttoning their coat, that's a subconscious way of saying, hey, I'm getting comfortable with you. Leaning in, that means they're hooked, and they want more. And a hand on the chest, that's a really powerful sign of sincerity and acceptance. Good stuff all around.
Okay, so now that we know how to spot the good signs, we have to talk about the red flags. These are those critical warning signals that tell you something just isn't right. They can mean defensiveness, or discomfort, or just plain disagreement, even if their words are saying the complete opposite.
One of the most common red flags you're going to see is defensiveness. The moment someone feels attacked or just really disagrees with you, they'll often create a physical barrier. And the classic #1 example is crossing their arms over their chest. It's an unconscious way of saying nope and shielding themselves. It's a huge sign that you might need to change your approach.
Let me tell you a quick story about this. There was a professor asking his student about a book he'd assigned. The student kept insisting, "Oh yeah, I loved it. It was great." But right as he said it, he did this tiny little thing. He briefly touched his nose. Well, the professor, being a master of this stuff, knew immediately something was up. He just looked at him and said, "You didn't like it, did you?" And bam, the student folded and admitted he'd barely even read it. See? That's the power of one tiny gesture.
Here are a few more red flags to add to your mental toolbox. See clenched fists? That can signal some serious frustration. A hand covering the mouth? That's often a subconscious move to literally hold back words they don't want to say. Oh, and this is a big one. If their body and feet are pointing towards the door, trust me, their mind is already out of the room.
All right, we've covered the basics, the green lights, and the red flags. Now, it's time to really level up. In this section, we're going beyond just good or bad vibes. We're going to learn how to read what's actually happening inside someone's mind, their confidence, how they think, and whether they're ready to act.
So let's look at two very different inner states. On one side, you have what I call the thinker pose. Head tilted, hand resting on the cheek. This is a fantastic sign. It means the person is genuinely listening and really considering your idea. But on the other side, you've got pure, unfiltered confidence. Steepling the fingers, that's a classic power pose. And putting your feet up on the desk, that's a huge territorial display of dominance.
Ever wonder if someone is right on the verge of making a decision? Well, there's a little sequence of cues that's a dead giveaway. First, they might put their hands on their hips, that classic "I'm ready for action" pose. Then, you'll see them lean forward, both physically and mentally engaging. And the final tell? They'll move to the very edge of their seat. At that point, you know they are ready to make a move.
Now this is fascinating, how we signal an internal struggle. When we're under a lot of stress, we often try to physically restrain ourselves. Gripping your own wrist behind your back, that can be a way of holding back frustration or anger. Locking your ankles under a chair, that's a huge sign that someone's trying to suppress a strong negative emotion. And like we said before, clenched fists are all about holding back a really intense reaction. These are all signs of a person under major pressure.
Wow, we have covered a ton of ground. We've learned to spot green lights, red flags, and even how to get a peek into someone's inner state. So now it's time for the most important part. How do you actually use this new superpower out there in the real world? Okay, before you go out and start reading everyone like a book, there's one golden rule you absolutely have to remember. Please, don't get fixated on a single gesture. One crossed arm doesn't automatically mean someone's mad at you. One nose touch doesn't mean they're lying. The real story, the real truth, is always in the clusters of signals. Context is everything.
So let's make this super simple. Here's a little 3-point checklist to take with you. First, always look for those green lights. That's how you know you're building a great connection. Second, pay close attention to the red flags. They're your cue to maybe dig a little deeper or just change your approach. And finally, practice reading their inner state to really understand their mindset and maybe even predict their next move.
You know, we've spent all this time talking about reading other people, but let's just flip the lens around for a second. Now that you have the code, take a moment. What's your body saying right now? How are you sitting? Where are your hands? What signals are you sending out into the world? Because your body is always talking. And now you can finally understand what it's saying.